The massive space station hung in the darkness like a small metal moon. Ships from dozens of different worlds surrounded it, their hulls glowing with strange lights and alien designs. Inside the main council chamber, beings from across the galaxy sat around a circular table that could hold 500 delegates. Admiral Tamman stood near the human section, his dark uniform simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by other species. His weathered face showed the strain of 3 days without sleep. The emergency session had been called after the worst. News and galactic history arrived through long-range sensors. Commander Jinwoo stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that let every species understand each other. The destroyer fleet has awakened, he announced. The deep space monitors confirm 47 massive ships are moving toward the inner systems. A wave of fear rippled through the chamber. The destroyer fleet was legend made real. An ancient race had built the automated warships before vanishing into history. Each ship was the size of a small city and packed with weapons that could crack planets. For thousands of years, they had slept in the dark between stars. "How long do we have?" asked a delegate whose blue skin shimmered under the chamber lights. 6 standard months before they reached the first inhabited systems, Jinwoo replied. "Maybe 7 if they maintain current speed." Admiral Tamman listened as panic filled the room. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of different languages. Some called for evacuation of entire star systems. Others demanded that all military forces combine for a final battle. A few suggested surrender might be the only option. Jin-Woo raised his hand for silence. "There is one possibility," he said. "Our analysis shows the destroyer fleet operates from a central command nexus. If we could disable it, the individual ships would shut down automatically." "Where is this command center?" demanded a tall being covered in green scales. "Deep inside the Razor asteroid field, approximately 47 light-years from here." Jinwoo touched a control pad, and a holographic display appeared above the table. "The facility is built inside the largest asteroid, protected by automated defenses and surrounded by a maze of space debris." The hologram showed a nightmarish landscape of spinning rocks and twisted metal. Laser batteries dotted the larger asteroids like deadly flowers. Patrol drones moved between the obstacles in patterns too complex for organic minds to track. At the center sat the command nexus, a dark fortress carved from solid rock. "Our best military analysts have run over 3,000 combat simulations," Jinwoo continued. "Every scenario results in complete destruction of any attack force before they can reach the target." Admiral Tamman studied the display with professional interest. He had seen difficult military objectives before, but nothing like this. The approach routes were death traps. Defenses were designed by minds that thought in terms of absolute destruction. Any ship that entered the asteroid field would face weapons fire from every direction. "What about a massive fleet assault?" suggested the delegate with 4 arms and silver skin. "We tried that simulation first," Jinwoo replied. "Even with every military ship in the galaxy, less than 1% would survive long enough to reach the outer defenses. None would penetrate to the command center. Stealth approach. It's impossible. Its automated sensors detect any object larger than a grain of sand moving through the field. Long-range bombardment. The command center sits 3 kilometers deep, inside solid rock. Our most powerful weapons cannot penetrate that far." Admiral Tamman noticed how quiet the chamber had become. These were experienced military leaders from races that had survived countless wars. They understood hopeless situations when they saw them. Jinwoo looked directly at the human section. "There is one more option. Small infiltration team using unconventional tactics. The mission would require someone willing to accept impossible odds." Every eye in the chamber turned toward Admiral Tamman. felt the weight of their expectations and their doubts. Humans were still newcomers to galactic society. Many species considered them reckless rather than brave. "Do you want to volunteer for a suicide mission?" Admiral Taman said. It was not a question. "We need someone who thinks differently than the rest of us," Jinwoo admitted. "Human military doctrine has surprised us before. Perhaps you can see possibilities that we cannot." Admiral Taman touched his communication device. "Captain Hyansu, please report to Council Chamber 1 immediately." While they waited, the chamber filled with nervous conversation. Some delegates whispered about human psychology and their tendency towards self-sacrifice. Others questioned whether any single person could succeed where entire fleets would fail. Captain Hyansu entered the chamber 15 minutes later. He was younger than Admiral Taman, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail around him. His uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Special Operations Command. Behind him walked a woman in civilian clothes, carrying a data tablet. "Captain, this is Engineer So-young from the Colonial Survey Division," Admiral Taman said. "I asked her to join us for technical consultation." Captain Hyansu nodded politely to the assembled delegates, then focused on the holographic display. He studied it in complete silence for several minutes while hundreds of beings watched him. His expression revealed nothing. Finally, Jinwoo cleared his throat. "Captain, we need someone to infiltrate the command nexus and shut down the destroyer fleet. Our analysis indicates this would be a suicide mission for any force attempting it." Captain Hyansu continued staring at the hologram. He walked around the display, examining it from different angles. Engineer So-young followed him occasionally, pointing at specific details and whispering in his ear. "Captain." Admiral Taman prompted. Captain Hyansu looked up at Jinwoo with an expression that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You said this would be a suicide mission," he said in a voice that carried clearly through the translation systems. "Yes, that is correct. I have one question." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the constant hum of the station's life support systems seemed to pause. Captain Hyansu pointed at the holographic display of the deadly asteroid field, the impossible defenses, and the impregnable fortress at its heart. "For who?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jinwoo blinked in confusion. Several delegates looked at each other uncertainly. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. "I do not understand," Jinwoo finally said. Captain Hyansu turned to Engineer So-young. "How long would you need to run geological surveys on the asteroid field?" "Standard deep scan analysis. Maybe 2 weeks if we use long-range sensors." "Good, Admiral. I will need a complete equipment manifest for civilian mining operations, current shipping schedules for this sector, and detailed specifications on those automated patrol drones." He looked back at Jinwoo. "Also, I want to know everything about how that command center controls the destroyer fleet." "You are accepting the mission?" Jinwoo asked. "I am accepting an engineering problem," Captain Hyansu replied. "Whether it becomes a suicide mission depends entirely on whose suicide we are talking about." Captain Hyansu stood in the military briefing room aboard the human transport ship. 5 officers sat around a metal table, each one hand-picked from different specialties across human space. The room was small and practical, nothing like the Grand Council chamber where alien delegates made their speeches. Lieutenant Minho was the first to speak. His scarred hands moved nervously as he studied the mission files. "Captain, I have blown up everything from battleships to space stations, but this asteroid field looks like a graveyard waiting to happen. What concerns you most?" Captain Hyansu asked. "The approach vectors are all death traps. Those automated laser batteries have overlapping fields of fire. Okay, even if we somehow got past the outer defenses, the command center sits behind 3 kilometers of solid rock." Minho shook his head. "Sir, I can make big explosions, but I cannot make miracles. Sergeant Dayun looked up from her communication equipment. The electromagnetic interference in that asteroid field is worse than anything on record. Standard military communications will not work past the first defense perimeter. We would be flying blind and deaf. Tyler Genesio spread navigation charts across the table. I have been studying the flight paths for 3 days. The patrol drones move in patterns that block every possible route to the target. Even if we could somehow slip past them, the asteroid field itself is constantly shifting. It's one wrong move and we get crushed between rocks the size of cities. Engineer Soyoung tapped her data tablet. The power requirements for the command center are enormous. It takes massive energy to control 47 destroyer ships across interstellar distances. That kind of power generation creates heat signatures, visible from light years away. Captain Hyun-soo listened to each concern without interrupting. When they finished, he walked to the wall display showing the asteroid field. What do you see when you look at this? Okay, a fortress designed to kill anyone who approaches it. Minho replied immediately. I see the same thing, agreed Dayun. Navigation nightmare, added Genesio. An engineering marvel, said Soyoung. Whoever built this understood defensive architecture. Captain Hyansu nodded slowly. You are all correct. Now, let me ask a different question. What do you see when you look at a mining operation? The team exchanged puzzled glances. Lieutenant Minho spoke first. Crews extracting valuable materials from asteroids, heavy equipment, processing facilities, transport ships, controlled explosions to break up large rocks, added Minho. Complex logistics to move materials between different locations, said Jun-SEO. Engineer Soyoung leaned forward with sudden interest. Detailed geological surveys defined the most valuable deposits. Teams that know every rock in their operational area. Good, Captain Hyan-soo said. Dayun, I need you to establish contact with civilian shipping networks in this sector. Find out about mining permits, cargo manifests, and regular transport schedules. Sir, why do we need civilian shipping information? It's because military ships attract attention. Civilian ships are invisible. Captain Hyan-soo turned to Genesio. I want you to study commercial flight patterns instead of military approach vectors. 8. How do mining ships navigate through dangerous asteroid fields? They use completely different methods than military vessels, Genesio realized. Slow, careful approaches. They map every obstacle before moving. Exactly. Minho, forget about assault explosives. I need you to research mining charges and construction equipment. How do civilians break up asteroids safely? Lieutenant Minho looked confused, but nodded. Mining explosives are designed for precision, not destruction. They fracture rocks along natural fault lines. Soyoung, those geological surveys you mentioned, how detailed can they be? Engineer Soyoung smiled for the first time since the briefing started. The right equipment, we can map the internal structure of every major asteroid in the field. Density, composition, structural weaknesses, everything. Captain Hyansu returned to his seat. The aliens see this as a military problem requiring military solutions. They think in terms of attacks and defenses, battles and casualties. Right. Is why their simulations always end in failure. What kind of problem do you see it as? Asked Dayun. A logistics challenge. The command center needs massive amounts of power. That power has to come from somewhere. The automated defenses need maintenance and resupply. The patrol drones follow predictable patterns because they are machines, not living beings. Lieutenant Minho frowned. Are you saying we should disguise ourselves as a mining operation? I am saying we should become a mining operation, for real. Captain Hyansu activated the wall display again. Hi, look at the geological composition of the asteroid field. What do you see? Engineer Soyoung studied the data for several minutes. Rare metals, crystalline formations, unusual mineral deposits. This field will be incredibly valuable to civilian miners. How valuable? Billions of credits worth of materials. Maybe trillions, enough to justify a major mining operation. Absolutely. Any corporation would send their best teams and equipment for deposits like this. Captain Hyansu turned to the rest of his team. The alien council sees an impregnable fortress. I see a construction project that someone abandoned in the middle of the most valuable asteroid field in known space. Pilot Genesio began to understand. You want to approach the command center as miners, not soldiers. I want to approach it as engineers solving an engineering problem. Dayun, can you hack civilian mining licenses and permits? Give me 6 hours and a strong communications array. I can create documentation that will pass any inspection. Genesio, how long would it take to convert our ship to look like a civilian mining vessel? The whole modifications would take maybe 3 days. Installing mining equipment would take another week. Minho, civilian mining operations use controlled explosions all the time. Would that attract attention from the automated defenses? Lieutenant Minho thought for a moment. Mining explosions have specific signatures. They are designed to minimize debris and energy release. The defense systems might be programmed to ignore them as normal industrial activity. Sayunk, if we are conducting legitimate geological surveys, would we need to get close to that command center? Engineer Sayong grinned. Any thorough survey would require detailed scans of the largest asteroid in the field. We would have every right to be there. Captain Hyansu stood up. Then we have our approach. We become the most thorough mining survey team in galactic history. We map every rock, catalog every mineral deposit, and follow every safety regulation. And then, asked Dayun. Then we solve the engineering problem of how to shut down 47 destroyer ships without firing a single shot. The team sat in thoughtful silence as they realized their captain was not planning a military assault at all. He was planning something completely different. Lieutenant Minho shook his head slowly. Sir, the alien council will think we have lost our minds. Good, Captain Hyansu replied. Let them think that. While they worry about military tactics, we will be busy changing the rules of the game entirely. Outside the briefing room, Admiral Taman watched through the observation window. He had seen Captain Hyansu plan difficult operations before, but never anything like this. The young officer was not just thinking outside conventional military doctrine. He was thinking outside the concept of warfare itself. The question was whether human, unconventional thinking could succeed where traditional military might would certainly fail. In 6 months, they would all find out. The modified mining ship drifted slowly toward the edge of the Razor asteroid field. From the outside, it looked exactly like thousands of other civilian vessels that worked the dangerous rock fields throughout the galaxy. Heavy drilling equipment hung from the hull. Cargo containers for processed minerals filled the lower decks. Even the ship's identification codes belonged to a legitimate mining corporation. Captain Hyansu stood on the bridge watching the sensor displays. The massive asteroid field stretched ahead of them like a wall of spinning death. Rocks the size of mountains tumbled through space in patterns that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Between them, smaller debris created a maze that could crush any ship that made a wrong turn. Beginning standard geological survey approach, announced pilot Genesio. Reducing speed to civilian safety protocols. Lieutenant Minho studied his explosive detection equipment. Captain, I am reading energy signatures from the automated defense systems. Those laser batteries are definitely active, but they are not targeting us. Why would they target a mining ship following proper approach procedures? Captain Hyansu asked. 'Cause most people would expect them to shoot at anything that gets close. Most people think like soldiers. We are thinking like miners. Engineer Soyoung looked up from her geological scanning equipment. First survey drones are away. I am getting incredible readings from the outer asteroids. The mineral composition here is unlike anything in our databases. Sergeant Dayun monitored the communication frequencies. No challenge signals from the defense grid. Our mining permits and survey licenses are being accepted by the automated systems. Captain Hyan-Su nodded with satisfaction. The builders of this place were thorough. They programmed their defenses to recognize legitimate civilian operations. They never expected someone to use that against them. The ship moved deeper into the asteroid field at the careful pace required by mining safety regulations. Every few hours, they stopped to deploy survey drones that mapped the surrounding rocks in perfect detail. The geological data they collected was genuine and incredibly valuable. Any real mining corporation would pay millions for information this detailed. Sir, Genesio reported, we are approaching the first automated patrol route. Those defense drones will pass within 2 kilometers of our position. Maintain standard mining operations, Captain Hyan-Su ordered. Deploy the drilling platform and begin sample collection from that medium-sized asteroid. Lieutenant Minho activated the mining equipment with practiced ease. The drilling platform extended from the ship and attached itself to a spinning rock. Cutting beams carved neat holes into the asteroid surface, while collection arms gathered the extracted materials. To any observer, it looked like routine industrial work. The defense drones appeared as scheduled, sleek forms cutting through space with mechanical precision. Each drone was the size of a fighter ship and armed with weapons that could vaporize anything in seconds. They approached the mining ship in perfect formation. Defense drones are scanning us, Dayun reported with tension in her voice. Let them scan, Captain Hyan-Su replied calmly. We are exactly what we appear to be. The drones circled the mining ship twice, their sensors recording every detail. After 5 minutes, they moved on to continue their patrol patterns. They had found nothing suspicious about a civilian vessel conducting legal survey operations. Engineer So Young smiled as she watched them leave. The beauty of hiding in plain sight. They scanned us completely and learned nothing useful. How long until we reach the target area? Captain Hyan-Su asked. At current mining survey speed, approximately 18 days, Genesio answered. Good. That gives us time to do this properly. Over the following weeks, the team established a routine that looked completely normal from the outside. They moved from asteroid to asteroid, conducting detailed geological surveys and collecting valuable mineral samples. Their survey drones mapped every rock in their path with scientific precision. Their mining equipment extracted materials that any civilian operation would consider profitable, but Captain Hyan-Su was gathering information that had nothing to do with mining profits. The patrol drone patterns are more complex than we thought, Dayun reported during one of their daily briefings. They follow routes that change every 72 hours, but the changes follow mathematical formulas. I think I can predict their positions weeks in advance. Lieutenant Minho studied the geological surveys with growing excitement. Captain, look at these fault line patterns. The asteroids in this field are not randomly placed. They are connected by stress patterns in the rock formations. If you triggered the right fractures, you could cause chain reactions across entire sections of the field. What kind of chain reactions? Captain Hyan-Su asked. Controlled collapses, gravitational shifts. You could rearrange the positions of major asteroids if you knew exactly where to place the charges. Engineer So Young nodded enthusiastically. The geological data supports that theory. This entire asteroid field is basically one giant structure held together by gravitational balance. Change the mass distribution in the right places, and you could alter the orbital patterns of everything in the field. Kyla Genesio looked confused. Why would we want to rearrange asteroids? Captain Hyan-Su activated the holographic display, showing their survey data. Weeks of careful mapping had revealed details that no military intelligence service possessed. The command center's defenses are designed around the current configuration of the asteroid field. The laser batteries have specific firing arcs. Patrol drones follow routes based on the positions of major rocks. Everything assumes the field would remain exactly as it is now. But if we change the field layout, Dayun realized, their defensive systems would become useless. Not useless. Misaligned. Captain Hyansu highlighted specific asteroids on the display. Look at the command center's position relative to these major rocks. It sits in the perfect center of a defensive formation that has protected it for thousands of years. Lieutenant Minho studied the tactical implications. If we moved these key asteroids, the command center would be exposed from directions that its defenses cannot cover. More than exposed, So Young added. According to these stress calculations, the right sequence of gravitational changes would isolate the command center completely. It would drift away from its defensive grid. Back at the Galactic Council Station, Admiral Taman faced increasing pressure from alien representatives. The destroyer fleet continued its advance toward inhabited systems. Every day brought the automated warships closer to worlds with billions of innocent people. Commander Jin Woo approached him in the observation deck. Admiral, we have been monitoring your team's progress. They appear to be conducting mining operations instead of approaching the target. Captain Hyansu follows his own methods, Admiral Taman replied. The Council is growing concerned. Some delegates believe the humans have abandoned the mission in favor of mineral profits. Admiral Taman watched the distant stars and thought about his conversation with Captain Hyansu before the mission began. The young officer had requested things that made no sense from a military perspective. Geological equipment, civilian, shipping codes, detailed surveys of rock formations. At the time, Admiral Taman had trusted his judgment without understanding his plan. Commander, how many military operations have successfully penetrated automated defenses like those protecting the command center? None on record, Jin Woo admitted. Then perhaps it is time to try something that has never been attempted before. Meanwhile, deep in the asteroid field, Captain Hyansu's team prepared for the most ambitious engineering project in human history. They had spent weeks studying the problem from every angle. Now they understood something that no military strategist had considered. The impregnable fortress was only impregnable as long as it remained where it was built. But everything in space could be moved if you understood the physics involved. Placing the charges according to So Young's calculations, Captain Hyansu ordered. We are going to teach those ancient builders that humans do not fight fortresses. What do we do instead? Asked the men-ho. Captain Hyansu smiled as he watched the tactical display showing their carefully planned sequence of gravitational changes. We move them. Captain Hyansu stood at the mining ship's control station, watching dozens of displays that showed the positions of every major asteroid in the field. 3 weeks of careful preparation had led to this moment. His team had placed precisely calculated charges on 43 different asteroids throughout the massive rock formation. All charges are in position and armed, Lieutenant Minho reported. The timing sequences are locked into the detonation computer. Once we start this, there will be no stopping it. Engineer Soyoung checked her gravitational calculations. 1. Final time. Captain, I want to be absolutely clear about what we are attempting. Hi. We are going to trigger the largest controlled demolition in recorded history. If my math is wrong by even small amounts, we could destroy half this asteroid field. Dan, if your math is correct, the command center will find itself completely alone in open space, separated from every defensive system that protects it. Pilot Genesio monitored the positions of the automated patrol drones. Sir, we have a clear window in exactly 14 minutes. The next drone patrol will not reach this area for 6 hours after that. Sergeant Dayun established secure communication channels with each of the remote charges. All devices are responding to control signals. I can trigger them individually or in program sequences. Captain Hyansu looked at each member of his team. For 3 weeks, they had worked as miners and engineers rather than soldiers. had followed safety regulations, collected genuine mineral samples, and conducted the most thorough geological survey in galactic history. Now it was time to reveal what they had really been building. Big Sequence Alpha, he ordered. The first set of charges detonated in perfect synchronization across 17 different asteroids. The explosions were small and precisely placed, designed to fracture rock along natural fault lines rather than create destructive blasts. From a distance, it looked like routine mining operations, but the effects were anything but routine. Massive asteroids that had held the same positions for thousands of years began to shift as their internal structures changed. Gravitational forces that had remained balanced since the formation of the field started pulling rocks in new directions. What looked like minor mining explosions triggered gravitational changes that affected millions of tons of space debris. Sequence Alpha complete, Min-Ho reported. Beginning sequence beta in 30 seconds. Engineer Sayo watched her sensors with fascination and terror. The gravitational waves are propagating exactly as calculated. Look at asteroid cluster 7. It is already beginning to drift toward the new gravitational center. The second wave of explosions came from charges placed on asteroids in completely different parts of the field. Again, each blast looked like standard mining work, but the combined effect created a cascade of changes that rippled through the entire rock formation. The automated defense systems are reacting, Dayun announced. I am detecting increased activity from the laser batteries and patrol drones. What kind of activity? Captain Hyansu asked. They are scanning for threats, but they cannot find any. All they see are mining explosions from a legitimate civilian operation. Their programming does not classify us as hostile. Pilot Genesio studied his navigation displays with growing amazement. Captain, the major asteroids are moving. Really moving. The flight paths through this field are changing in real time. Sequence Gamma initiating now, Min-Ho announced. The third wave of explosions targeted the largest asteroids that formed the foundation of the field's gravitational structure. These were the rocks that had remained motionless for millennia, their massive bulk anchoring everything else in place. When they began to move, the effects were visible even from their distant observation position. Engineer Soyoung pointed at her displays with excitement. There, look at the command center. Asteroid, it is separating from the defensive formation, exactly as we predicted. On the holographic display, the fortress that had seemed completely impregnable began to drift away from the laser batteries and patrol routes that protected it. The ancient builders had designed their defenses around a static asteroid field. That never changed. They had never imagined someone would change the field itself. The patrol drones are trying to maintain their original routes, Dayun reported, but the asteroids they use for navigation are no longer in the right positions. They are getting lost in their own defensive grid. Laser batteries are losing target acquisition, added Genesio. Their firing solutions were programmed for specific asteroid positions. With everything moving, they cannot calculate proper aim points. Captain Hyansu activated the ship's long-range communications array. Admiral Taman, this is Captain Hyansu. We are beginning the final phase of the operation. Back at the Galactic Council Station, Admiral Taman received the transmission in front of the assembled alien delegates. For weeks, they had questioned human methods and demanded explanations for what appeared to be a mining operation rather than a military mission. Captain, report your status, Admiral Taman replied. We have successfully isolated the target from its defensive systems. The command center is now vulnerable to direct approach. Commander Jinwoo stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. How is that possible? Our sensors show massive gravitational disturbances throughout the asteroid field, but no military engagement, because we did not engage their military systems. Captain Hyansu explained. We engaged the physics that their military systems depend on. Lieutenant Min-Ho triggered the final sequence of charges. These explosions were larger than the previous ones, designed to complete the gravitational changes that would leave the command center completely defenseless. The fortress asteroid continued drifting away from its protective formation. Laser batteries that had guarded it for thousands of years found themselves aimed at empty space. Patrol drones flew predetermined routes that no longer made tactical sense. The entire defensive grid became useless because its foundation had literally moved out from under it. Target is isolated and defenseless, Saw Young reported. We can approach the command center without any risk of automated weapons fire. But how do we shut down the destroyer fleet? Genesio asked. Captain Hyansu smiled as he activated the mining ship's drilling equipment. The same way we moved. An asteroid field. We used the tools we brought for the job. The massive drilling platform extended toward the command center asteroid. But instead of extracting mineral samples, it began cutting precise holes in the fortress walls. Lieutenant Minho guided shaped charges through the openings, placing them at critical points throughout the facility's power systems. The command center requires enormous amounts of energy to control 47 starships across interstellar distances. Soyam explained as she monitored the power flows. Cut the power supply, and the entire network shuts down automatically. The final explosions were not visible from outside the asteroid. They were small, precise charges that severed power conduits and destroyed control systems. Within minutes, the signals controlling the destroyer fleet went silent. Across the galaxy, 47 massive warships received their final command. Return to standby mode and await further orders that would never come. Mission accomplished, Captain Hyansu reported to Admiral Timon. The destroyer fleet has been neutralized. In the council chamber, alien delegates sat in stunned silence as they realized what the humans had actually done. They had not fought the impregnable fortress. They had made it no longer impregnable by changing the rules of the battlefield itself. Commander shook his head in amazement. You moved an entire asteroid field. We solved an engineering problem, Captain Hyansu corrected. The military problem was just a side effect. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Admiral Taman stood at the center of the circular table, facing representatives from every major civilization in known space. Behind him, a massive display showed the current status of the destroyer fleet. 47 ships, drifting powerless in the darkness between stars. The threat has been eliminated, Admiral Taman announced. All destroyer ships have entered permanent standby mode. Their automated systems are responding to shutdown protocols that cannot be reversed. Commander Jinwoo studied the tactical reports with obvious confusion. Admiral, your casualty reports show 0 human losses, 0 ship damage, 0 ammunition expended. How is this possible? Because Captain Hyansu did not fight the enemy, Admiral Taman replied. He removed their ability to be enemies. The blue-skinned delegate who had spoken during the original crisis meeting raised her hand. We need detailed explanations. The council authorized a military mission against an impregnable fortress. Instead, we received reports of mining operations and geological surveys. The mining operations were real, Admiral Taman confirmed. Captain Hyansu's team extracted over 4 billion credits worth of rare minerals during their mission. The geological surveys were also genuine and scientifically valuable. But how did mining operations destroy the destroyer fleet? Midel. Taman activated the holographic display showing the asteroid field before and after the human operation. They did not destroy anything. They moved everything. The display showed the incredible transformation that had taken place over the span of 6 hours. Asteroids that had occupied the same positions for thousands of years now drifted in completely different locations. The defensive grid that had protected the command center for millennia was scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space. It's impossible, declared the tall delegate with green scales. No known technology can move objects of such massive size. No military technology Admiral Taman corrected. But civilian mining operations move massive objects every day. They call it controlled demolition and gravitational engineering. Engineer So Young stepped forward to address the council. During the mission, she had remained aboard the mining ship as a technical advisor. Now she stood before the greatest military minds in the galaxy to explain how humans thought about impossible problems. The fortress was never actually impregnable, she explained. It only appeared that way because everyone assumed the asteroid field was a permanent feature. But nothing in space is permanent. Everything moves if you understand the forces involved. She highlighted specific asteroids on the display. We identified 43 key rocks whose positions maintained the gravitational balance of the entire field by changing their internal structure with precisely placed mining charges. We created new gravitational patterns that pulled everything into different positions. You moved an entire asteroid field, Jinwoo said, still not quite believing it. We redirected gravitational forces that were already present, So Young corrected. The field wanted to reorganize itself into a more stable configuration, just gave it permission to do so. Captain Hyansu entered the chamber, carrying a data tablet filled with technical specifications. His uniform showed signs of the hard work his team had performed over the past month. Unlike the elaborate speeches and formal presentations, typical of council meetings, he spoke with the practical directness of an engineer reporting completion of a project. The operation succeeded because we treated it as an engineering problem rather than a military problem, he announced. Military thinking focuses on destroying enemy capabilities. Engineering thinking focuses on changing the conditions that make those capabilities possible. Lieutenant Minho joined his captain at the speaker's platform. The automated defenses were designed by brilliant military minds. They anticipated every possible form of attack, but they never considered that someone might change the battlefield itself. The laser batteries had perfect firing solutions for their original positions, added Sergeant Dayun. When we moved the asteroids they were attached to, those firing solutions became useless, could not adapt because they were programmed for a static environment. Pilot Genesio activated a detailed navigation chart. The patrol drones followed, routes calculated for specific asteroid positions. When those asteroids moved, the drones became lost in their own defensive grid. They spent hours flying predetermined patterns that no longer made tactical sense. The alien delegates listened with growing amazement as each human team member explained their role in the operation. What they had considered an impossible military challenge had been approached as a series of connected engineering problems: gravitational mechanics, controlled demolition, precision navigation, and power system analysis. Commander Jinwoo raised his hand. Captain Hyansu, when you first heard about this mission, you asked who it would be a suicide mission for. What did you mean? Captain Hyansu looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of dozens of different species. You all approach this as a military problem because that is how your minds work. Military minds see enemies to be defeated, obstacles to be overcome, casualties to be accepted. And human minds see what instead? Asked the blue-skinned delegate. Systems to be understood, variables to be changed, problems to be solved. Captain Hyansu gestured toward the display showing the transformed asteroid field. You saw an impregnable fortress protected by unbeatable defenses. We saw a construction project built in the middle of the most valuable mining territory in known space. So the suicide mission was for the automated defenses, Jinwoo realized. Exactly. They committed suicide by being too rigid to adapt when their fundamental assumptions changed. Admiral Taman stepped forward to address the final question that every delegate wanted to ask. The council needs to know if human methods can be applied to other military challenges. Captain Hyansu exchanged glances with his team members. Engineer So Young nodded slightly, while Lieutenant Minho smiled with quiet confidence. Every military problem is also an engineering problem, Captain Hyansu replied. The difference is that military solutions focus on applying force, while engineering solutions focus on understanding systems. When you understand how something works, you can always find ways to make it work differently. The chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement settled into the minds of military strategists from across the galaxy. For thousands of years, they had approached warfare as a contest of strength against strength. The humans had just demonstrated an entirely different approach: intelligence against rigidity, adaptability against programming, creativity against convention. 3 months later, Captain Hyansu sat in his sister Guiyang's apartment on Earth, sharing dinner and watching news reports about the disbanded destroyer fleet. The massive ships had been converted into research stations and cargo haulers, their weapon systems replaced with scientific equipment. I still do not understand those 3 words you sent me before the mission, Guiyang said. Physics beats tactics. What did you mean? Captain Hyansu smiled as he looked out the window at the stars. Tactics are about using available resources efficiently. Physics is about changing what resources are available. And that is what makes humans different. That is what makes humans human. We do not accept the universe as we find it. We change it into what we need it to be. Guiyang nodded thoughtfully. So, when the aliens told you it was a suicide mission, you were already thinking about whose suicide it would actually be. I was thinking about how to make sure it was not ours. Outside the apartment window, spacecraft moved between Earth and the orbital stations that managed interstellar trade. Some of those ships carried rare minerals, extracted from an asteroid field that everyone had thought was too dangerous to approach. The most valuable mining operation in galactic history had been a side effect of solving an impossible military problem. Captain Su raised his glass in a quiet toast to his team members, scattered now across human space, but forever connected by their shared understanding of how to turn impossible odds into engineering opportunities. In the end, the question had not been whether humans could defeat an unbeatable enemy. The question had been whether they could make that enemy defeat itself. The answer, as always with humans, was yes.